This week on RSBANDB Update, the Lore Diggers assemble to discuss Moia. Moia has been around for centuries, but only recently has become one of RuneScape's key characters. We profile her rise and discuss how her character has evolved through RuneScape's 6th age. This is RSBANDB Update, episode 977, recorded Thursday, March 14th, 2024. Queen of the Wilderness. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of RSBANDB Update. This week we're doing something a little bit different this week. We're bringing out of the back cabinet the Lore Diggers series back. And of course, Tanis, you're here as you are each and every week.
Thank you, Shane.
Also joining us on this Lore Diggers panel is Zerdones.
Hi there, ready to dig.
Resident Clan Quester, lore aficionado. You own the Master Quest cape yet?
Oh yeah, I've had it for ages.
Nice. And Avernick, who you remember from our quest coverage in the past, and of course, probably best known for in RS getting the Ark into game. So, welcome, Avernick.
I heard the word lore and I showed up.
Yeah, and I appreciate you, Zerdones, for mentioning Moia, because I had some different ideas of potentially people we could go with on this one, but I think Moia makes a lot of sense given where we were at with Zamorak last time we gathered to do one of these. So
yeah, that was sort of my thinking. Like, when you asked me, I was like, man, I really wish I knew where the story was going, because that would be sort of the best thing to do, is sort of something that ties into that. But, I mean, Moia is sort of the last big story beat we had. Mm-hmm. So that seems like the next best thing.
Yeah, and I want to point out that these Lore Digger panels are based on our interactions and interpretations of the lore only, and should not be taken as gospel, because I think we got the Zamorak one pretty wrong in terms of what we were thinking might be happening in that storyline next with that.
I think
we probably always will.
Yeah, we're not canon, in other words, right? Like
yeah. But before we get too far down the track, show notes can be found at update.show. We also have our Discord at update.show/Discord, and the Friends chat is in-game at BitsBytes. I am Sheen12088. Tanis can be found at Tanis79. Zerdones and Avernick are just the wonderful folks without numbers in their name. Zerdones with an X, and I think everybody else can figure out how to spell Avernick from that point.
It's written a lot in the game.
It is. And before we continue on, just a big, huge thank you to all of our experienced tier Patreon members for allowing us to do what we do here each and every week. Without them, the podcast would not be possible. They form the keystone of that. So with that, I'd like to thank Amos Reed, Andrew C., Drama Free, Jason S., Jesse W., Kesky, Ricky A., Rippeth, Runestar, and the Naked Captain. All right. So I just want to say before we begin this that as this is a Lore Digger special, we will be going through quests and lore from previous updates. So if there's parts of the lore that you might not want to have spoiled for you that are relating to the Majorot or Moia in general, this is your warning for that. But we're going to be fairly loosey-goosey and free-flowing with the discussion on this week's episode. So Moia is interesting because she's half human, half Majorot, and the daughter of Lucian, which I don't know. Do we have any other human Majorot hybrids in game that we're aware of? Okay.
None that we know of. And we were talking about this a bit in pre-show, but how Moia came to exist is one of the more interesting unanswered questions about her. Because it's a question that's raised in universe a few times.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, and I want to know, like, did she get like the, like life DNA treatment, cloning, this, and all that kind of stuff, or was it just traditional
Traditional.
Traditional non-PCs.
Lucian lit some candles,
like
put on a
Lucian
Barry
put on the-
Manilow record.
Yeah, a little,
I mean,
little Barry
shapeshifter.
White, yeah.
So basically, you're wondering if there was, something more elaborate involved technology-wise, or if there was,
More
Runes-
biological.
RuneScape's first triple X lore.
Well, but I mean,
It's
but there is a reason
not
that
the
I was
first.
wondering all this, right? Because
Okay.
we know the Majra are small in number,
Yeah.
and they've had a hard time like keeping their numbers up. So I was thinking, was this some kind of like experiment or a happy accident?
Right.
Where...
And I really appreciate you asking that, because that's a question that we do need to dive into on some of this, because this has been a character that was sporadically used up until Extinction, and more and more she gained prominence throughout the 6th Age arc. So I think the best way to start this is just a brief background of Moia in terms of what she had in game, how she factored into Extinction, and where we're at right now. And this is going to be your 5-minute history of the character. We already mentioned Lucian's daughter, first mentioned in the Temple of Ikov quest, which of course goes
2002.
way back, 2002.
Way back when.
And fun fact on this, I remember doing Temple of Ikov and reading through the Lucian lore way back in the day on RS2, not RS Classic, and remembered that, oh wow, this is actually interesting. And I always knew after that the Majorod in particular was going to be an interest area of mine in game. And I feel like the writing back then created this entire mysterious race, but of course over time we learned more and more, and we know, the first fact we know, despite how Moia is portrayed in game, she's very old. Her time dates back to the previous ritual of rejuvenation in the 4th Age. We don't know exactly what year, but I know it's hundreds of years at least that are ages on this.
She's at least 500 years old.
And keep
we know
in mind,
she's 500. We
Older
know
than a
she's been
human,
around
younger than a
500
Majra.
years. Yep.
yeah, that's a good way of putting it, because we saw the ritual of rejuvenation in the 5th Age, and she was around for the one before that, which was a long, long time ago in a land far, far away. So, and this gets to what you were talking about, Tanis. We don't exactly know how she was created, but the entire thing that has been Moia's driving arc since the 6th Age has been ever increasing the role that she would play in the game storyline. And I imagine you could go, to the lore council or maybe even Mod Jack and, ask, how was Moia created, and you might get some sort of answer to it. That'd be a good thing to put to a lore Q&A if they ever resume those. But I think at the end of the day, we're kind of just going to leave that mystery aspect here, unless you guys want to, kind of dive into a bit of the history of her, of how she came to be later on that. But continuing, go ahead.
One thing that I wanted to bring up is it doesn't exactly answer how she was created in a mechanical sense, but one thing I noticed while I was doing some reading to prep for this episode is how, like, her existence sounds very similar to the Nihil, which is Nex's race, who were created by Zaros, basically taking unexisting species, and there were 4 that he used, and combining them with energy from Ma, from himself, which originates from Ma. So, like, that sounds very similar to Moia, who is a human infused somehow with Majorod energy, which is again derived from Ma.
So the idea then is that that Lucian as a Majorod might have the power to do something similar. Maybe
on a smaller scale.
Yeah,
hard to say, but it does seem similar in certain ways.
Yeah, and I mean that's an interesting way of looking at it, and definitely something that I think can, we can kind of think of and say, oh yeah, that's a a kind of good way to answer that. And until we get more information on that, but Moia's first presence in game is the Nadir Fremennik saga, and ever since then, her role has increased in that. And even in that saga, we saw her power increase there. And I know I wasn't, one of the biggest fans of the Fremennik sagas out there, but I feel like if we're gonna, point to a saga maybe and talk about how her hunt for Bilrock in particular has always been something that she was a part of, you start to see the very early templates of that in Nadir. So. We also know, of course, that Moia was instrumental in Extinction, being the sabotaging factor to the point where she tried to kill the player character. And it was from that point in that quest that it became very clear that Moia was going to have a role going forward, post Elder Gods. And
she was not going to be on our side.
Yeah. And,
hard to come back from that.
And it's interesting because Adrastea was also in that quest. And we're going to dive into each of these points in a little bit here. Mm-hmm. But it was that moment in Extinction that we kind of saw the writing on the wall, the last 15 minutes of the season of the TV show, where you might be able to gather an idea and say, yes, this is maybe where we're going next.
That's the next season
with the storyline. So. Yeah. And Bilrock, of course, central pillar. And, this is kind of where we left the story off, in that at the end of the Battle of Forinthry quest, we know that Bilrock is no more, and Moia has effectively taken over and is the de facto leader, I guess you could say, of the Zamorakian forces post-Civil War, because Bilrock's side, of course, won that Civil War, and we don't exactly know how all these pieces that are left out on the chessboard, so to speak, are going to be used in the coming storyline. We, of course, had the Necromancy season pause, and we need to pick up where we're at after that. So... Mm-hmm. Anything else on the brief overview? Anything I might have missed that you guys want to highlight before we move on to some of the deeper digging, let's just say?
What always strikes me as insane is the trace back to Temple of Ikov. Just because she's mentioned in the quest rejection dialogue, when you reject the quest from Lucian. So really, really pulling from those very deep lore cuts by time in Nadir. It's decided, we're going to make a lore, the most lore-full Fremennik saga, and it's going to be about this throwaway line. I don't know if it started that way or if it was attached to that, but...
That line must have inspired someone. There's no way that was planned in 2002.
No.
I would be very surprised.
No.
So, that must have inspired someone. And they're like, hey, that would be cool.
And how that's grown since.
Fun fact, Temple of Ikov was a Paul Gower quest. So you can definitely see somebody like Paul Gower just, throwing that out there as a quick line that, my daughter is more of a hero than you. And obviously, we don't even know the daughter's name at that point. But when it comes to the interactions later with Lucian, we know it's Moia. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that early time on Gielinor here, about where Moia's story began. And I feel like when we look at this and we look at the general discussion and the way the character went, we already talked about the half-human, half-Majorot factor, kind of tied to maybe one of Lucian's creations, but I think it was Sliske's endgame, right, where we learn that she was half-human, half-Majorot, right?
I think that was
in Nadir.
Okay.
I think that was in Nadir.
Yeah. I was like, that's
but it wasn't Sliske's endgame where Zaros commented on it.
Okay.
Well, we get two interesting interactions about that in Endgame. One of them is Zaros, and the other one is Azanadra, who is absolutely horrified.
Who is, I don't. That's the most appalled I've ever seen him. He usually doesn't have such a strong reaction to things. He's usually much more composed and the faithful servant.
He was absolutely. He was all about.
Ticks him the wrong way.
Yeah, just blasphemy, destroy, horror.
And Zaros not knowing even how Lucian did it. Which it's Zaros, so who knows what he's actually thinking? Maybe he's thinking, I won't let someone else actually create life or half create life as well.
And see, that's the thing. The secret of her creation died with Lucian, and he says that.
He says.
But then we like you said, Abernick, is that Zaros just doing Zaros things, or does Zaros not even know? But I feel like
he says he doesn't know is like, if he didn't actually know, would he even admit it?
Exactly. So I almost just want to ignore what Zaros said there.
Yeah.
Given the way the character is or was.
Yeah, that's the is Zaros.
What have you?
I don't know. Maybe at this point Zaros was written more earnestly. I think he was definitely made more backstabby with the Elder God Wars arc. So at this point, I really don't know if in Endgame they were thinking, oh yeah, he might have actually been lying, or no, he's still super earnest.
Or is there a way, just with the Majorat link on the Zarosian side, that he would know, right? Because they're all creations of this revision. So there's got to be some kind of tie passed down from Ma to Zaros, where, you might have some sort of idea of how something like that would work. But of course, the more shocking aspect is the fact that Moia is seen as an abomination by Azanadra, which, again, we're assuming Azanadra, the same consistent character, and for the sake of this section of the podcast right now, we'll say, let's assume this Azanadra we saw here in Endgame is the same Azanadra we worked with into and up to, the end of the Elder God Wars arc. We would never have seen Azanadra that, I guess you could say, concerned about that. And with that, it really does, beg the question, what happened here? Was this designed to be something that was, shock value for the Majorat? Or is this, just common RuneScape and fantasy literary devices where it's like, okay, we're taking the player for a ride on this. This is something out there for people who are fans of Moia. We're gonna upset them a bit, and we're gonna hope that they, rise up in relation to that, because she was, of course, the one of the ambassadors in the entire, Six Age arc.
Definitely a figurehead, yeah.
And
I am realizing, looking at this quote that in the document, is that right after this, I believe Moia yells out, "I might be the future of our race," which also might come back later. Seeing how things played out,
which you kind of see post Extinction.
Yeah, it's definitely, she seems to be much more preserving Majorat life and stuff like that. So I don't know if that was if that was a thought back, let's say Endgame, to make that her thing, or if that was something that was built off of. But
well, the implication I got, and I think Tana sort of hinted at this earlier, but the implication I always got from Nadir was that Moya's creation was an experiment into Majorat reproduction, because Majorat can't reproduce on Gielinor. They're biologically incapable. So they are literally a dying race.
Almost kind of similar to the Ilyushanka.
In
the
a
same
sense.
way that they need to find a different way to reproduce.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was maybe one of the biggest things to come out of that saga in general, but that is something that is consistent within the Majorat race, so it makes sense that it would be passed on there. And with that, you question, how long is Moya's lifespan going to be? Does she, and this is something, that I don't know has been answered, does she need to rejuvenate?
Well, that's also an interesting question, because in Nadir, Nadir has a very large time skip sort of in the first cutscene where we see Moia and she's looking like Moia, and then we jump cut 500 years later and she's not looking so good. And the implication that I always took from this is that, like other Majorat, she's just been bleeding power for 500 years, and she's been skeletonified like Azanadra, like Wahisatel, like all of them. And then at the end of the quest, or sort of towards the end of the quest, she starts rejuvenating herself by sucking down power out of Demonheim.
Like Bilrock was.
Yeah. So, maybe?
Is that why she was always on the hunt for Bilrock?
During the 500 years, she was on Lucian's orders. But incidental that she found the way Bilrock was also avoiding rituals.
Yeah.
And I would need to go back to it, but did we figure out why Bilrock was doing that at all in Ritual of the Majorad or anything surrounding that?
He was hearing voices and thought that Zamorak was at the bottom of this hole.
Yeah, he was looking for Zamorak. He was trying
Which,
to dig
of course, was with what they were aiming for initially with Daemonheim, and,
and then got upended by the 6th Age stuff.
Yeah.
And then sort of came back with Dishonour among Thieves a little bit. Sort of.
And that was the whole... You guys remember back in the day they pulled... I forget what it was, something versus Floor 61, but the something
Lord of
else
Imperium.
One.
And I don't think I would ever give up Lord of Imperium.
No.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I agree.
We made the right choice. Good on us, community.
Yeah, and see, that's that fixation on Daemonheim there. And this is just what I just find so fascinating, I guess you could say, with the RuneScape lore stuff, is that we have these, generic inflection points that are made by decisions that Jagex makes in terms of the lore. And of course, one of those is cracking open what became the 6th Age. And it really, begs to differ. Not begs to differ. It really begs the question, let's just say folks get their ceremonial 2012 RuneScape server pre-EOC back. And with that, the 6th Age stuff never happens. What is the history then? And what is the path that Daemonheim and the Majorad and whatnot take? Would it look similar to what Old School is now doing with their Majorad on that? And I realize this is getting a little bit away from Moia on this.
Yeah.
But slightly.
But the thing that I think brings us back is that there was always this, I don't know if we call it a fascination, but a need to find Bilrock. And eventually she does, which of course we, see in the Succession and Civil War story arc, to the point where Bilrock is offed and she becomes the de facto leader of the forces there in many ways, succeeding Bilrock. So maybe that was her destiny all along, and it was kind of foreshadowed in that initial saga maybe a bit, that Bilrock and her were going to have this kind of linkage, and it was going to be very important, kind of in the way of a student-teacher, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely student-teacher. I don't know, if the 6th Age hadn't happened, I don't know that we would currently be in a place where Moia would be leading the Zamorakians, because I feel like that was a function of Bilrock got a place of prominence because Zamorak liked him, or I guess Zamorak liked that Bilrock was laser obsessed on finding him.
Built this huge complex for him with all the forces that he was using.
Yeah. So Zamorak was like, "Hey, yeah, you're a good dude. You're loyal. You're going to be my right hand." And I think if Zamorak hadn't re-entered the picture, it's hard to say how that would have shaken out. But at the same time, the Zamorakians didn't really have a unified leader before Zamorak came back. So it's possible that they could have just been their own little faction.
Yeah. I think, remembering back to when Nadir came out, I feel like the reason that they made this whole, of the 5 Fremnik sagas, this is the one that's most story-driven.
It's also I think the only one that came out after EOC, so has actually aged a little bit better than the other ones, I think, right?
It came with a second Thok one.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it was 3 and then 2. But I think the interpretation around it when it first came out was this is an explanation for the strange power event that happened when Dungeoneering just came out.
Right.
It's either Bilrock or Moia died, and all 4 of the possible endings you could have chosen led to some Majorad dying. And then, of course, as soon as the Sixth Age happens, and now you have both Moia, and then especially when Dishonour Among Thieves happens, Bilrock back. They're like, it was kind of the Moia made it to Zamorak option, but also Bilrock went to Frenesque and found this other Moth thing and killed, and that was the strange power. So it very retconned its way around, like, oh no, they both get to live.
Yeah, and
but
see,
this was
that's
supposed to be an explanation for that.
Right, and see, that's the flowing and ebbing nature of the RuneScape storyline based on, what needs to change for the sake of, the direction the game takes on that. And we should hone in a bit on what we saw in Nadir, specifically the espionage, the disguise aspects, and the memory stealing, because I feel like the memory stuff definitely came back as well in terms of looking at Moia in the Civil War arc.
She's definitely much more like cunning and sly, and personally my interpretation of that is that she's only half Majorat, so she has to make up for that deficiency among her peers in other ways. She can't just raw power or magic at people and win.
Use the human side, use the deviousness.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, well, yeah, but she's also the most treacherous being. I mean, human and Majorat, right? Like
outside of the tier 2 gods, Zaros and Saren, of course.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
But yeah, just the fact that she needs to don disguises because she can't shapeshift. Like in Nadir, she's stealing Harthen's merchant gear or Tolma's armor or Yadura's necromancy gear. Like she's making up for that in her own way.
And it's interesting you mentioned necromancy gear and all of this, because it feels like, and you can see this even going back to, quests prior to the saga here, where the game is always flirting with the idea of what people like Bilrock are up to, what the Majorat are up to. Could there be something, related to necromancy? But we didn't get necromancy until 2023 in terms of a skill. And when you tee all that back up, to me, what I'm seeing here looking at this, and granted, we're still early on here in the early parts of this episode and what Moya's entire existence is about, I honestly feel like there was, and this is when the Gowers were still in charge, that there was going to be the central beat of the RuneScape storyline was going to be that Majorat stuff, and that was going to be the conclusion of the game's first big story when you start bringing all these paths together, at least, in the ones outside of the races, if that makes sense, because you're always going to have your gnomes and your elves.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah. I mean, the Majorat are sort of what sets RuneScape's lore apart from other fantasy properties.
Yeah.
It's one of the sort of the more unique, and it's not totally unique. Like the Majorat are essentially just a lich, which like liches are a thing. But it is, it is very sort of uniquely RuneScape, and they did form the backbone of the first major storyline.
Do you guys think? Sorry, go ahead, Avernick.
Oh, I was going to say, like, I think that it's pretty well established at this point that there were plans or ideas, at least, to put like a Zamorak boss fight at the bottom of Demonheim before the Sixth Age, and like that's like the culmination of Majorat stuff, right? He's the Majorat god.
Yeah, he's the king of the Majorat.
And you were supposed to fight a god, prior to the Sixth Age stuff.
Whatever a god meant at that point, pre-Sixth Age, before that was defined. But it feels like that could have been like a really big like climax of all the Majorat tomfoolery going on, and Nadir was post ritual of the Majorat, right? Because it had a scene that happened at the Ritual Stone, so maybe that was like the first inkling of this is where we're going to start headed. Is we're going to bring the Dragonkin, the castle in the Dragonkin, and the Majorat down to that, maybe.
Yeah, and I don't know if we mentioned the portal magic yet, but that was specifically mentioned as well. Bilrock's portal magic in the saga, and when you start summing all these things up, I think you're definitely on that right path there with that. Avernick, what did you mean by that there were 4 ending options, and the canon one is her accompanying Bilrog to the final floor.
Like a lot of things that released in this time, they thought that they could put a bunch of the player chooses the ending options. There were 2, I believe, that ended in Moia offs Bilrog, or at least knocks him out to the point it's implied that he's the strange power, and 2 where it was the other way around. I think one of them was like Moia threatening she's going to tell the other Majrak he's around, or one of them's like Moia's going to go with Bilrog actually to floor 61, or one's you say that but you intend to kill him. But it was pretty well defined when both of them were back by the time of Dishonour Among Thieves, that it was the option where they go peacefully in agreement down to floor 61, and then they both go through this chaos portal thing, and she ends up with Zamorak, and he ends up I guess on Forinthry to find that thing that he killed for the strange power. They had to consolidate the options. They couldn't make them all valid. It couldn't be both that she killed Bilrog and he killed Moia, and also they went peacefully down.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if they've changed since release, because I wasn't really playing at the time. But looking at the wiki, the 4 options are Bilrog. Moia says that she's going to tell on Dad, and Bilrog knocks her in the back of the head.
Mm-hmm.
Ending 2 is Moia decides to claim Demonheim for herself and tries to steal Bilrog's identity, and then Bilrog punches her out and drags her down.
Mm-hmm.
Option 3 is basically Moia says, "Yeah, I'm gonna go with you," but she's got her fingers crossed behind her back. And then option 4 is that, but without the finger cross. So I think you can make unless they've changed these since release, which is possible. I think you can make those work with how the storyline turned out. And I actually think the ones where there's more tension in their relationship sort of pay off Legacy of Zamorak a little bit better.
I guess I hadn't thought about it in that respect.
That's interesting. That's actually really interesting that you tie that back to Legacy of Zamorak. Because
one of the things that I found, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but one of the things that I found about Legacy of Zamorak is she's very, between Extinction and Legacy of Zamorak, in Extinction, Moia is very much like Zamorak's good little soldier.
Yep.
And then in Legacy of Zamorak, she's still Zamorak's good soldier, but she's got a whole lot less patience for Bilrog.
Mm-hmm.
And that seemed very sort of out of left field for me.
And
particularly sort of looking at the history as it's all compiled and laid out.
Yeah, and see, that's specifically why I wanted to ask at this point, in summarizing all this, is that can we see and say, with definitively, character-wise, that the Moia that we see in Nadir is the same Moia that we have now? Because this is what I was seeing, exactly the path we took on this in building this, is that I think that what we had here in the saga and the initial introduction of Moia definitely felt like they were obviously going a different path. And then we have this huge left turn when it comes to the Sixth Age stuff. So I had a bit of difficulty seeing how the character we had in the saga and what we saw leading up to that leads to where we got now. And like you said, Zerdones, the events post-Extinction, does this mean that, Moia would have turned out differently than she was portrayed here in the saga?
Mm-hmm. No, that's actually an interesting thought with, she's changing all the time to kind of meet story need. And especially like Legacy Zamorak, it is interesting to think maybe it was more malicious version. I did just find the Dishonour Among Thieves quote where Bilrog, when you ask about the strange power, says Moia and I joined hands and walked into the rift together. But also, he might not have known that she intended to kill him.
Yeah.
So,
and he also might have been lying.
That also, too. I mean, they are Zamorakians. They are de facto antagonists. I think it's the up for interpretation ending, I think, was probably the wrong choice. But I think us as benevolent readers can interpret it in ways that I think that actually the malicious endings are more interesting now.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I had settled at Dishonour Among Thieves that it was the nice ending, but
well, yeah, and I mean, to be fair, we would have settled, and we would have liked, and we did like what we saw in things like Dishonour Among Thieves,
empathetic,
and what was going on there, because we were in the process as players of being ratcheted up towards what we didn't know at the time was Sliske's game, which of course culminated in Endgame, and then led on to the Elder Gods, which we learned was the entire grand plot of the thing between Jazz and Sliske. But the point is that you have a character here that was used in a series of different quests in entirely different ways, and we can understand, and we see how the needs of the game to bend and meld into different directions is a thing. But that's exactly what I meant by, is this the same character? Because I think, like you said, the treacherous endings are more different, and I'd like to see where World in RuneScape winds up with something like this for the Majorat storyline. I think that'd be really interesting to see. So,
I think I'm not going to... This doesn't really address what you were just saying, but I think like the way to redeem the cooperative ending is that Moya's core character... Or you could argue that Moya's core character trait is finding out where she fits in the world, which is a natural story for her character because her character is fundamentally unnatural. Like her existence is an affront to the laws of the
what Majorat are.
To what Majorat are, to what humans are. Like she is one of a kind. She should not exist, but she does. So there's a natural story there, which is, well, where do I belong? And she starts that journey as the daughter of Lucian, and that's who she is. She is Lucian's soldier,
and she hates it.
And she hates it because Lucian's a colossal dick. So option 2 is, okay, maybe Bilrock will help me find who I am, where I belong. And then somewhere off screen that we don't see, that goes sideways, and she decides, right, screw it. Turns out Zamorak had the right idea, but Zamorak's not going to tell me who to be. I'm going to follow his message, and I'm going to decide who I be.
And that's where we get to...
And it turns out I am Queen of the Wilderness.
I
don't know if we're going to have to bleep that. I apologize if so.
Not
the bleep will be better.
Not she doesn't say I am amazing like Zamorak did.
Right. But if she did, she would be not lying.
Okay, that's fair.
Or not delusional.
Yeah, fair enough. And it's at that point you get to, the Six Age stuff and the Battle of Lumbridge in particular on that. But Patreon, before we do that, I want to thank our Patreon supporters before we go down another shift in Moya's character. So this week I'd like to thank Alvaro L., Amos Reed, Andrew C., Arvid L., Chilbura, Daniel W., Dominic R., Drama Free, Duramax, Free Milk, Gila Fleur, Jacob G, Jade Gizmo, Jason S, Jeebus, Jesse W, Kesky, Lemon Lodge, Ling01, Luminos, Nate the Great, Pernasius, Renhawk, Ricky A, Runestar, Samuel FL, Scott DS, Shirt Pants, Sky, Targian, The Naked Captain, The Dabbing Goat, Tim, Tom V, Ukulele Steve, Zant, and Zazakon. Of course, check us out at patreon.com/RSBNB. We just put out our March monthly bit. We had some illness on the team, so that was why we're a week late on this. But the topic of this month was an introduction to PVM with Pernasius as the guinea pig. The goal with this monthly bit is to lay out a blueprint for anybody who wants to take the first steps from Slayer up to doing PVM, getting comfortable with God Wars 1, God Wars 2, to the point of eventually being able to kill all the Elder God Wars bosses on normal and some of the other ones around that level as well. We go over gear, perks, equipment, action bars, the whole shebang in about an hour and 15 minutes. So if that sounds interesting to you, sign up at patreon.com/RSBNB. But everybody else, who has access to that episode already, gets access to an entire back catalog of 60-odd other monthly bits, the ability to vote on monthly bit topics, and, of course, the pleasure of helping to fund the cost for hosting and production of RSBANDB Update. These ads are not scripted. That's why sometimes they sound different. That's why sometimes I say you're hosting the show. I don't necessarily know if you are, but it might be happening that way.
Put that on the Patreon tier rewards.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if somebody wants to, do that at some point, we would happily do that. Just have to be the right person, the right arrangement. But oh boy, that's a topic for another day. Don't put that on us, or don't. We also have the VIP tier, $3 a month. You receive a special VIP rank on Discord, including chat channel access, mentioned on the podcast at the start of the month, as well as access to high-quality stereo versions of the show. And we, of course, have our Insider tier where you'll receive a shout-out on the podcast each and every week, and you'll also gain access to the clips we use to make the clip show at the end of the year. And, of course, another big, huge thank you to our Experience tier Patreon members. Thanks so much, everybody. Check us out, patreon.com/RSBANDB.
Thanks.
All right. Sysadmin things aside, Battle of Lumbridge. Another huge inflection point in RuneScape stories, and another huge changing time for Moia. And I feel like we had, a very clear character that was mentioned based on what we knew and what we put together from the saga. But maybe you're right, Sir Jones. Maybe Moia's entire existence is to be that blank slate that can ebb and flow as the game devs need, but also as she figures out herself. Because I think we've all seen movies where there's a character who doesn't necessarily know their place, and eventually by the end of it, winds up in one place or another for better or worse.
Sure, I mean, there's whole classes of fiction based on that premise.
Yeah. Are they very popular? Like, in general? Like, I personally, don't like the characters to change that much, but maybe that's just me.
There's it's funny that we're talking about this, because I know this is something that Mod Shrike finds very annoying, is that there's a whole bunch of writers or wannabe writers who were raised on Star Wars who think that the hero's journey is the only way to tell stories. So, are they popular?
Why did she say that?
Oh, I don't remember. It might have been on her old Twitter.
Yeah,
which she deleted and she left.
And see, that's actually a very, very interesting point, because what other character in game, aside from us, uses their arc to tell the story?
Zanuck.
Okay.
Start listing them all.
It's always Zanuck.
Stafflan.
Yeah, Saflan. I was reaching for the name, but yeah, Saflan is kind of similar in that respect.
I wouldn't say it's that often.
What about who? Sorry, Shane?
The kid with the lamps.
Philip?
Yeah.
Oh, Philippe. Yeah, Philippe does. Yeah.
It is one quest.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not
Veldaban?
It's not like, okay, maybe. And
yeah, somewhat.
He was pretty
but point has been made then.
Anyway.
The point is made with this is that Moia is the biggest of them then, out of everybody that we've mentioned so far on this.
She's possibly like one of the longest running characters that gets a consistent screen time, which is, I think, happened in the background for most people.
Yeah, she doesn't get a lot of high profile,
at least not
appearances. Not till
Extinction.
Recently, yeah.
Foreshadowing.
I mean, you don't get any higher than being Zamorak's emissary in the start of the Sixth Age live event in 2013.
Yes, which I think begs the question, why Moia? Because there were many options, so why was Moia chosen as the general?
You choose somebody who can relate to humans.
Relate to humans.
Is that your theory?
My theory was that the first sentence you said about her during this Lore Diggers episode Moya is a half human, half Majrat daughter of Lucian is an amazing selling point. She has one of the best one sentence. This person's cool.
Yeah, she has a good hook.
And that makes total sense now that you mention it, because what they had wanted to happen with Battle of Lumbridge is they wanted Zamorak to win. But
they thought he was going to be so cool.
Right.
Yeah, well,
and
if they thought he would win.
Well, yeah. No, it was specifically... I know somebody out there specifically said that they were thinking Zamorak would win. I don't remember who it was, but they were thinking Zamorak would win.
Yeah.
But he didn't, because people back then perceived it as good versus bad, and went with Saradomin instead, when it wasn't until Dishonour Among Thieves and a bit after that we really learned the nuance of what Zamorak is all about. And then you see exactly what you said, Avernick. How neat does that sound? Half human, half Majrat being your representative to Zamorak in the Battle of Lumbridge. Because everybody knows, of course, that the Majrat was very popular. You know, you look at things like Desert Treasure and all of the Zaros stuff leading up to there, as well as, of course, Ritual of the Majrat quest. With that, while Gothic Sleeps, everything tied to that, you would think that that's why you choose then.
Even more so, you're trying to appeal to players that probably don't read everything.
Yeah.
And she looks cool, and she has a lot of cool associations.
Who was Saradomin's general again? Or emissary?
A new character.
Oh yeah,
it was the ice scene that's persisted a little bit in the Fallor Castle since.
Yeah, he is doing combat drills in Fallor Castle courtyard.
I think they didn't even think they needed to have someone cool for Saradomin. He's like, Saradomin sells himself, or they didn't even want to sell Saradomin. But
yeah, I mean, I think the argument would be, this argument doesn't really work because, like, yeah, Shane is right. Jagex expected Zamorak to win because they assumed the players were all edgelords. But, like, on a narrative standpoint, generally people take the good options. And by the time of Battle of Lumbridge, we'd had a decade of lore establishing Saradomin as good and Zamorak as the literal embodiment of evil.
Yeah, that's pretty RuneScape.
You do, like, in order to make those two sides equally compelling, given those two facts, you do need to sort of make Saradomin way more boring and Zamorak way more interesting.
Yeah, and you do that with Moia.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be a theme going forward. She's used a lot as the figurehead for Zamorakians, even though as far back as Dishonour Among Thieves, it's very clearly established she's not even the right-hand guy.
And you see, here's the issue. I don't think the vast majority of players out there, judging by the reaction to Extinction and the subsequent Civil War arc, like the character.
I don't think
she had much of the Extinction and Civil War arc going on in this time, at least.
No.
But it would be this time leading up to her being
right. And
the Extinction person.
The reason I say that is because I feel like the character wasn't liked, and I feel like you can bring that back even further in that the fact there were these ambassadors with story behind them, and I mean, if you knew the lore, you knew the saga, and you did a Lore Diggers back in 2013, you would have known that there was something to Moia, and that might have been very interesting to you. But the point is that she was overshadowed and has consistently been overshadowed by, in the recent era, player sentiment and the way the players feel about it, the Elder Gods, and in the Battle of Lumbridge, of course. Oh my god, it's Saradomin and Zamorak for the first time in Lumbridge firing big beams at each other.
Well, that's kind of, like, you basically just summed up the whole problem with the Sixth Age.
So everyone got overshadowed?
Everyone got overshadowed because the gods are here, and the gods are a big problem we have to deal with.
Yeah.
And that is specifically why the thing that was going to bother me the most about Old School is that I didn't want anything to do with the future of their Majrat storyline if there was ever a chance they were going to bring the gods back, because I don't think that should have happened in the Old School line. they're not going to do that. But
No,
it's
I
that
think they've
overshadowing
learned.
I don't think they're going to do that.
and just taking it up to 11 when they didn't need to. And that's why, we're just seeing these connections here right now with Moia as the ambassador.
Big marketing push.
I feel like we could do a whole episode just on talking.
The Sixth
Do a
Age.
whole Lore Diggers just on the Sixth Age.
Just on the Battle of Lumbridge, actually.
Yeah, no, we're not doing one episode on the Sixth Age. No.
No, I think also, just to throw it out there, another reason that Moia might keep popping up is for a lot of the reasons Erdones was mentioning during the Nadir saga, is that I think she's probably a field day for writers. Like, she has so many complex relationships right off the bat. I think she might just be fun to write for.
Well, I know, I can't remember who it was that said this, but I know one of the J-mods was very happy both with her and with Trindine because they're both just snark factories.
That's a different kind of writing, but yes, I can see that also being
It's a
fun.
different kind of fun, but it does help.
Absolutely. In the same way that maybe one recent character that might have gotten destroyed called the Raptor might not have been as fun to write for.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So I think that does factor into, like, what do people want to work on, which, I mean, they're controlling the stuff. So, like, if what they want to work on is what we get.
Yeah. And, this is all fine and dandy, the overshadowing bit, but I think the biggest thing comes to, how that battle ended is that it was Moia herself who saved Zamorak at the end of it.
Yep. She got that spot in the very choppy cutscene. I don't know how it plays in your guys' computers, but that thing is never.
Oh, it was fine. Well. It was fine on my end.
I think they've fixed them. I remember trying to watch them in like 2020, and they were awful.
Are you sure it's not broken again?
No. No, I am not.
Yeah, she does get that position to save Zamorak, which probably going forward in Dishonour among Thieves, they probably thought, oh, he saved her, she saved him. She probably gets a higher status now. Yeah. For being at the battle, for being
right, and then you can also abstract that all forward to where we're at now, with in effect, like we said, de facto leading the Zamorakian forces. Then you have
all the way back in 2013.
Then you have another case as well in the Tuska event where she's the ambassador again. But I just kind of read into that at the time that they would go with her because she was already the ambassador for everything else, already Sixth Age. So it kind of just made sense to keep it the same on that, I guess.
Did they redo this? I'm sorry, I'm gonna look at this real fast.
Well, I know what happened is that when the Tuska World event happened, I think all the representatives from the faction went to the Tuska's back thing or wherever it was, the lobby where before we would go do the live event there. So
I was looking to see who did the other leaders also carry over.
I think so.
It was also Patomenes.
Yeah, but I feel like that entire Sixth Age period, like you
they
said,
changed out Patomenes.
Oh, interesting.
To Bree, the centaur from Godbreath Dungeon.
Okay.
Interesting. Anyway,
I feel like when it comes to the Sixth Age stuff, you could really, like you said, Zerdone's do an entire episode or series of episodes on that, in effect summarizing it and looking back on it. But when we get to the other stuff that we were looking at in the Sixth Age, and we go specifically to Dishonour Among Thieves, that makes sense. We want to specifically talk about her bit at the Empyrean Citadel. I think you put this one in the notes, Abernick. This one was you, or was this Zerdone's? Because there's a break there in the line.
Probably me. Yeah, I was trying to break up the world events versus the Dishonour.
Okay, fair.
The quest versus the event appearances.
Yeah, and what about that advances the character, reaffirms the character in your view?
I mean, just the fact that during the heist, she's the one calling shots. She's like the point person, and Bilrock doesn't even go. I don't know what they're like. I feel like if Bilrock was supposed to be the right-hand guy and he was supposed to be important and they wanted to use him, he would go on the heist where he would do something. I really don't know why they gave the hand-wave excuse that he'd be better tracking Sliske from the base. unless they want Moia to be the top dog.
Well, I think another reason is Moia gives a different kind of gameplay.
Yeah.
Because Dishonour Among Thieves is where we get Moya's memory drain power come back, and that gives her a unique kind of gameplay style. Whereas if we had Bilrock, he's just another Majorat. We already have Zemo.
Just another Majorat might be one of the best reasons why Moia keeps getting spotlight, is because amongst the others,
have too many Majorat.
Yes,
she's special.
Problems
going back to what we said, like you said at the
2012.
start of the episode.
Yeah.
we need less of them.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
see, I feel like if you played through the 6th Age and you look specifically at how Moia was carried through all the different quests, and you were just specifically focusing on Moia and the lines that wound up coming up with that, I think you get to a point where you could say that, yeah, even before Dishonour Among Thieves, I could support the Zamorakian side, so to speak. But I don't necessarily know, even when Dishonour Among Thieves was happening, if people wanted to go that way.
I think at that point, everyone was like, "Where's my God's Quest?" And only a couple of them got them. I think at this point, people were actually pretty set. Like, emissaries had come out, people had picked their faction, and they weren't going to be swayed, I don't think.
Well, the largest one was definitely Zarosian, I have to say, probably.
Yeah. Fate of the Gods came out, and that battle was lost for everyone else.
From what I've gathered from what JMods have said, I don't know if there's numbers on this that are known, but I think Saradomin and Zamorak were vying for top 2, and then everyone else was just left in the dust. And then
Saradomin and Zamorak or Zaros?
Oh, sorry, Zaros.
Yeah, okay.
Saradomin and Zaros. Everybody else left in the dust, and then the poor godless were drowning in the bottom of the pool.
Right, the original intent of the player's going to be against the gods like Guthix wanted, and then everyone wanted to be on the gods.
Yeah, no one wanted to be godless.
Yeah, and the whole part of invention, so to speak. But I guess to just bring all this back, we'll go to some of the dialogue, I guess, that was mentioned at various parts about this. Again, mentioning Bilrock and the specific, tie back to Moia talking about her Majorat and human heritage. And she said, "For that, I thank him, but I thank him more for introducing me to Zamorak." So that's what it was all about in the end.
Yeah.
She always was very grateful for the Zamorak thing. That was also that was dialogue from Battle of Lumbridge, so she was definitely trying to sell Zamorak. But it did seem, at least from that dialogue, that she was full on. I don't know if in Nadir she even expressed very much like devoutness or fealty or whatnot. But after meeting the god that her father followed and Bilrock followed, she's like, "Oh, I get this."
Well, I think before Nadir, she was Lucian's errand girl, and I don't know that Lucian was all that much of a Zamorakian, really. He was sort of
he wanted to do what Zamorak did, but he wasn't worshipping.
Yeah, he was in it for himself.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He always felt like a rogue factor on that, in terms of what we knew of him. And Moia summed it up best. "I owe it all to Zamorak. He is the father I never had."
There's probably is very impactful for a lot of things that go forward.
Yeah, and I feel like our next section here kind of takes a bit of a turn on that. So we should probably summarize, the Battle of Lumbridge and Dishonour Among Thieves section here on this. But obviously, same character. Does it still feel like she's the same character we met in the sagas and the lineage before that? Like, the big change hasn't happened yet, has it?
I think that she's slightly different in that she cares about Zamorak now, to serve a purpose, because the 6th Age is very much being in a god's faction. But to the extent that I don't think she's complex yet. Like, she's pretty
fair.
single focused, one-minded.
Yeah, okay. Her narrative role is to be the Zamorakian. The Zamorakian, what you interact with.
What about when it comes to Till Death Do Us Part and the forbidden thing known
She's
as
technically in this.
Technically in this, yeah. Halloween event. To unleash a bit of stuff on Zautak, which I feel like is the next thing that people are always still talking about, is Zautak done?
Yes.
Personally, I think Zautak has been confirmed as being done at the end of Elite Dungeon 3. That's my personal take on it.
And this
but I know there's lots of people who would
the-
like to wedge that door open and explore that more.
Yeah, I mean, not to go too far off the rails, but I think Zautak is a random conflict generator where you can basically just have Zautak be at the root of any kind of conflict. He's instant plot, just add water.
Zautak and Erebus is kind of something to, I don't know, solve the Elder God problem.
Well, yeah, I mean, we still
that,
we still got the idea of that mysterious, sixth Elder God and where all those, people went
and mystery
whatnot.
keeps people engaged.
Yes,
and as long as it stays mystery, they'll stay around.
And
I really hope they never actually resolve it because I don't think the engine could take it.
Oh no, they couldn't make that.
Right,
but,
and you said a very key point.
Closed.
I have always found the RuneScape storylines most interesting when they are baked up in mystery and not necessarily having a god or some other factor, just sitting in front of us telling us
explain their history.
What is going on, right?
Yeah.
Like, to put it in the sense of archaeology, the things that got me the most interested in that mystery-wise were the writing on the walls and the stuff at the bottom of the Sintistan dig site. So...
Well, that's J.J. Abrams' thing, the mystery box. Questions are more important.
And it
than
always
answers.
falls apart when it demands an answer.
Yeah,
like you can't end that story is the problem.
And everyone's happy.
Yeah.
Lost.
Oh, God. Okay.
Star Wars.
But yeah, tying back to Moia, Till Death Do Us Part did happen during Zautak Mania, just before a couple months before ED3 came out. But also Moia wasn't on the key art for this, right? It was the Four Horsemen, and then the narrative payoff that came in ED3 with the lore page. It wasn't even the full book; it was the page. Was the Calgarians were trying to do some Zautak ritual, and they used Moia for a reason. I don't know if it was ever explained why she was the right choice, but she was clearly a good choice to use for something that was combining Demonheim with the payoff moment of Nightmare Lucen. I think that she's a means to getting the really cool boss fight at the end.
That would be really fun to, kind of pull on for more threads, I think. And in many ways is very tangential to what we had just talked about in the Sixth Age and Battle of Lumbridge things. But at the same time, it's exactly what we said at the beginning. This is the character who is, in effect, the wet Play-Doh that can be molded as Jagex needs. And we're going to get somebody in the end who, like you said, Zerdones, has a bit of conflict and a bit of, reasoning behind them. So, that's interesting you mentioned that because I do not have all the lore pages out of ED3, so I wasn't aware of that, and I haven't actually gone out to read them yet.
It was there's a mini boss in ED3. It was an extra Calgarian general. And there's the lore page about how they tried to summon Zautak during the Halloween event, and then they didn't succeed because of us and the horsemen. And so then they got recruited onto the ambassador's squad.
Yeah. And I remember that Halloween event, everybody was, just focused on the horseman stuff at the end, but I guess if you dug down to it, you knew that this was kind of where it was coming from on that. So, like you said, it's the mystery box that you can shake that makes things interesting. But if it ceases being a mystery, it's never gonna be the proper payoff, and you don't know what the
even if you nail the payoff, then you get the immediate question: what's next?
Yeah,
what's bigger?
Right.
Even if you managed it,
and see, that's the thing. Has Jagex ever managed to pull off a story like that?
Mileage varies with Elder God Wars.
Which is where we go next.
Segway.
Interestingly enough. You're getting very good at that, Abernick.
I can read what the next line is.
Yeah. So Elder God Wars, and of course this is where we get to things like Desperate Times, Desperate Measures, and being the front force for the Zamorakians in Saren's Council, where you crammed everybody into that room.
Always needs a Zamorakian representative. It's always Moia.
Yeah. And with this, how did we feel about... I mean, we didn't really have much, aside from some side dialogue from her in the initial start of this quest until... the series until she appeared in Extinction, did we? I don't think.
And until I was looking into her for this episode, I forgot she was on the council.
Well, it's so easy to, because who isn't on that council?
I mean, she's not Juna or Ichi, so she's not 50% of the room.
Or Zerador.
I forgot he was... Yeah, Zerador. Yeah. The big ones.
Yeah. And see that's the thing. If you look back to the dialogue that was there, you see, and the wiki's really good at this, by the way, if anybody's ever interested in pulling this up, if you want to see anywhere that Moia speaks, they do have a list of all of her transcripts where
great material.
where she was active in there. And when it comes to the Elder God War stuff, it was really, just looking at this here, it was really just Desperate Times.
Can I or can I not use your land as a place to plant seeds? Yeah, that's that section.
No, because that's basically it.
No, because until Carapax shows up.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was just not a thing, but like a tool to...
There's a plot device.
A plot device, yes. That's
right. And with that, what does this...
Until she's not.
Right, and that's what I was getting to, is that General in Battle of Lumbridge, General for the Elder God Wars things, and, we have the dialogue in Desperate Times, but again, I don't think anybody, when we were, teeing things up here, thought that she would become what she has become now and become the, the central linchpin to the story here. Like, looking at the Desperate Times transcript, she has 13 lines in that quest, which is obviously a huge quest dialogue-wise.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned specifically, you have the introduction of where she says who she is and who she's working for. And then it's a bit about planting the garden on that. And, maybe you might have an army of the undead or something to that effect. She mentions the Empyrean Citadel again, which might be an interesting place. But beyond that, there's really nothing in that quest and anything else in the Elder God Wars arc until Extinction that points to Moia being a role. And I'm wondering with this, was that kind of a way? Because I never know how this works, and it'd be interesting to get some backstory if the arc from Desperate Times to Extinction was mapped out at that point.
Yeah.
I think that there is way enough time between Desperate Times and Extinction that it was probably not. And I think it would have been at the end of Elder God Wars when they were starting to map out Legacy of Zamorak and Age of Chaos and Forinthry, where they're like, we should probably put her in something now before people call it an asshole. Which would then be Shrike seeing, they made the model already for Legacy of Zamorak. Let's put her in this.
Yeah, I would probably put the decision a little bit earlier in time, but yeah, broad strokes, I think I would agree. I don't think by Desperate Times they knew they were going to use Moia in a significant way.
2019 to 2022. It was 3 years.
Yeah.
A lot happened in those 3 years.
A lot did. Including them figuring out that they were getting the gods off world. What are we doing next? Etc.
Yeah. And then we get to Extinction on that, which I feel like is the one that everybody's probably wanting us to talk about here. Yeah. Because this, in many views, was kind of the like we mentioned, another case of, the last 15 minutes of the season, this is where we're going for the next season sort of thing. When we're on Aya and whatnot, took the eggs there and we're running to try and escape, and oh my god, she tries to kill us and prevent us from getting back.
Yeah. How did you guys feel about that? Because I know some people were not happy
I also
thought
know
she was
some
friend.
people.
Yeah.
I was not happy.
Were you not happy in that you expected it, or that you're like, why would she do that? I've been nice to her.
Mm-hmm.
My sense of that is that at that point in time, I was too focused on the bigger goal. And
Not
the
dying.
thing, yeah. And the thing about that was like, okay, we've been dealing with this quest that has, and I think it's actually been said by Maud Shrike herself. We said it on the show. It is Daddy Issues the quest, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Presented in a various number of ways. So it really didn't, make sense why she was there. But I think one of the things, and I think we did talk about this on the special we did with Jack and Shrike when Extinction came out, was that the idea behind presenting Adrastea, presenting Moia in that quest, was there to kind of pave the way for where they were going next. And that was deliberately there and just kind of an extra in terms of everything, that was presented there on that.
Yeah, it's set up for Legacy of Zamorak. And I do think she makes sense in the quest, both in the sense of I think her inclusion makes narrative sense because of Daddy Issues the quest and because she's an interesting foil to Adrastea. But also, like, to answer Avernix's question, I thought she was totally in character. I had no issues with her trying to... I mean, I don't want to put it that way because, obviously I'm not stoked, but I thought it was in character for her to want to kill me at that point.
Right.
Because our goals were diametrically opposed.
And it's very Zamorakian to do that. It's about what can you do to shake the box to make your faction wind up better next.
Like, yes, she's been friend up until now, but that's because whenever we've interacted with her, we've been on the same side.
Yes.
We're not on the same side anymore.
Yeah, and we also need to say here, one huge thing we learned about the Zamorakians in the Sixth Age was that Zamorak's entire shtick was shaking the box to find an entirely different outcome for what's happening next. And Moia does this exact same thing in Extinction. So with that in hindsight 2020, of course, the whole disclosure on that, 100% in character.
I think Moia is like the only one that does that. The other Zamorakians...
Well, Zamorak himself did that.
Zamorak himself.
I think that's the thing. That's the point.
But the other followers, debatable. I think they're pretty one note. They're pretty.
Well, she considers Zamorak her father, so it makes 100% sense.
But she's much better at that younger mindset.
Yeah.
Of actually doing chaos.
Yeah, she's an actual worthy successor to Zamorak's philosophy. Everyone else is either just evil for the sake of evil, or
they were on board with evil Zamorak. Like, well, who the hell is this other guy that showed up in Battle Lumbridge? I'm not going to that.
Or they're like Bill Rock and they just want to be in charge and they just want to have hierarchy. They want to be Ceredominists, but wear red.
So what you're basically saying is that they, in effect, just want to be in charge, whereas folks like Zamorak, Moia, have a grand vision of how they want things to be and are willing to employ those Zamorakian tactics of shaking the box to make it happen.
Yeah.
That's why she did what she did in Extinction.
Yeah, I mean, either they just want power or they just want to be dicks. But yes, I agree with that statement.
And then this is interesting because this was in big bold letters put in the notes by you, Avernick. And when I opened the doc today, that's exactly the first thing I came here to say as well that I wanted to put in here, is that Extinction marked a big turning point for how Moia is used and presented in the game.
Yeah. I think she's a person now. I think that they have an idea of what they're doing with her, and she's not been wishy-washy.
That and that action and that move in Extinction is totally within character, given how closely she followed and, we could even say was mentored by Zamorak, probably.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, definitely. I mean, confirmed in the Battle of Lumbridge.
Yeah. So
But now actualized.
Yeah. Now she's graduated, top of her class, and now she's ready to start her career preaching the good word of chaos.
yeah, and see that's the thing. I think if you, like we said, if you just took the storyline that and you know branched it off after the Nadir saga and didn't do the gods coming back and went for a different ending, you know, for the Majorat stuff, I think you probably would have ended up with a different Moia character where she
Yes.
probably wasn't as in as high of a leadership position and was probably, you know, in many ways just another cookie cutter Majorat, let's just say, right? Except maybe
Functional.
shunned because of the half human thing.
A different appearance.
Yeah,
To
that
spice
too.
it up.
That too. And which, by the way, RuneScape Wiki has all her different appearances there if you want to go look at them.
Yeah, largely now using the new model. Thank you, Stu, for going back and replacing her in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say I know they replaced a bunch of her old models. I don't know if they replaced all of them. I think they have.
The Battle of Lumbridge one that continued through the 6th age, except for the Battle of Lumbridge and Tuska comes because the world event stuff has been changed. Like largely that pink dress one is out. It's only in the wiki still because Legacy, it wasn't an event.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they can't change the cutscene because the cutscenes are pre-rendered.
Yes. So that brings us to a point then with this where we see that foil with Adrastea. We see Moia now being used as a character and presented as a way that is more developed and is that leadership role of the Zamorakians. I guess kind of a little bit after Extinction, but it's not really solidified until after the Civil War arc.
After Succession, yes.
And I think if you're to look at it from that perspective, yes, of course, we had the full, you know, Carapac and Saren conclusions in Extinction, but also I'd say, you know, one of the B or C plots of Extinction was probably, you know, bringing Moia's character to full growth and allowing her to step into this role for what was going to be, you know, the next arc here. So
yeah,
it did a lot. Extinction did a lot,
right?
Also, Carapac, and
and see, that's the thing. I feel like that was a quest that really polarized people in one way or another, and because of that, I think that a lot of the things that we're kind of, you know, unearthing now with this really weren't appreciated on Quest launch week, because I know we didn't spend this much time. I don't think we spent any time really talking about, you know, what the potential ramifications were for Moia aside from the betrayal in Extinction and, you know, using that as a method to get out, right?
Yeah, the focus at the time was very much on resolving the immediate storyline and that
and Saren's big actions.
Yeah, and that was that was a really hard brief. I don't think that was ever going to be entirely satisfying. But yeah, like that focus means that we miss a lot of the other things that are going on in the quest.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I was the only person I knew of or people I was aware of who played the quest who actually came out of that quest liking Saren more.
As in you respect her?
What do you mean by liking Saren more?
Or as a character?
Like
understanding her motives, agreeing kind of with the way that she, you know, did things, and
so
the general
with
methodology.
Her, like liking her as a person or liking her as a character? Because there's a difference between those two things.
He agrees with her philosophy.
With her choice of blood over water.
Okay.
Yeah, the philosophy is a good way of putting it. Tannis, you were there on that episode. You know how that discussion went. Yeah.
But I just wanted to say one thing about the Moia of Extinction. Is I don't think at the time, I know at the time I didn't know that was going to be like my favorite version of her. And I don't know if that's like because that's where she was in her character development, or if that's just who was writing for her at the time. But it does stand out to me as the best version of Moia.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the waters maybe got kind of muddied a little bit post-Extinction in terms of, the whole Daughter of Chaos and Civil War side of things, in addition to, what else we were working on at the time with that, because, again, that was an interesting time for the game and the way the quests were delivered, because you recall that we had effectively one mini-quest to start the thing, and then 3 Civil War mini-quests after that, and then Succession to kind of end it, and people were like, okay, that's a storyline, that's an arc, but yeah, it was, and we got to a point, and this is where we wanted to mention this here, that everything after Moia trying to kill us in Extinction was different than before. It was, in many ways, it felt like a different character, but in the analysis of it here, I think the glove fits still. Do you guys agree that everything we've talked about here kind of led to that? And even though it felt kind of sharp in the way it was turned, it made sense, and it was valid in the Succession/Civil War arc.
Yeah, kind of go ahead. Breaking both. Sorry, if you want to go first.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I think kind of breaking both ways. Like, yes, I think by Extinction they knew where she was. Obviously, they knew where she was going, and they knew leading into it. But also, Extinction just had a different writer than Legacy of Zamorak did for whatever real life matters in our assessment.
Yeah.
It does feel different because I don't think Shrike's written for Moia since Extinction. And also maybe just like the midway point of Moia transitioning from Zamorakians, where we're kind of working with them in Elder God Wars, and then going into they're going to be the faction is going to be the de facto antagonists going forward. Maybe that just caught people the right way in Extinction. But I think it doesn't not make sense. Sorry, Zerzones, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, I was going to say, like, I think, having gone through all the analysis, I think I somewhat agree with you, Shane, that it's not completely out of left field, which is a kind of it's an evolution from where I started this conversation.
And it's an evolution for, most people who did Extinction, I would say.
I think it runs into the problem that we have with a lot of character development in RuneScape, which is there's a lot that happens off screen. There's a lot of stuff that we just don't see. And like Sarah Doman got hit with this real bad, where he has, like, he spent most of the 6th Age being just absolutely irredeemably awful. And then he has this redemption arc that we only see about 30% of.
Mm-hmm.
And so that leads it to sort of not landing well with a lot of people, because it doesn't feel organic. It feels very stilted because of the way RuneScape tells stories and how quest
the
releases
rate of content.
Yeah. So I think it does work. Let me rephrase that. I think her character evolution between Extinction and Legacy of Zamorak makes sense. I think it would have worked better if we'd been able to spend more time with her. But I realize for practical reasons that isn't how it was going to happen, but, you know.
Yeah, you can't necessarily do that. And you have to, of course, look at what the story they were trying to tell was in that Civil War arc, in that it was the aftermath of Zamorak being gone, and what happens when you remove such a powerful figure. Well, it's going to, descend to fighting in the wilderness, and it's going to be a question of, well, guys, who's going to win? And, based on the characters we had at the point and what was going on, with the forces at the time. Obviously, Bilrock's forces did end up winning that, and Moia being close to Bilrock kind of, I think, probably telegraphed why Bilrock won, and that Moia was going to be that central figure, going forward, even even beyond Succession on that. And in the Succession quest itself, the thing I always go back to is just that night and day difference. The final cutscene of the quest with the song that shows the differences in the Saradominist, I don't want to say empire, but the Saradominist side in Falador, and the Zamorakians in the wilderness, and that, the Saradomists are celebrating their perceived win over, the forces that were going to be coming in from the wilderness. Meanwhile, it's at least heavily implied that there's some form of an execution or something going on the Zamorakian side, and you get this really stark different storytelling in the way they ping pong back and forth in that quest cutscene. And that in effect really sums up for me the Civil War storyline and the culmination of Moia as the what's next factor in this, because recall, we didn't even really see Adrastea that much after Succession.
No, it's a good writing trick, because functionally Adrastea and Moia are Saradomin and Zamorak. They fill basically the same narrative role.
Yeah.
But they don't have, like, they're both effectively blank slate characters. Adrastea literally, because she wasn't a character until Extinction, so she could be written to be literally anything. And Moia, because prior to Extinction, she was basically a lamp. She was a plot device more than a character, as we said. So they don't have the same character baggage as Saradomin and Zamorak.
Right.
So you can have that. You can have that status quo of Saradominists good, Zamorakians bad, which is where the game is going, as much as some people wish it wouldn't. And you can have that without also having to deal with Saradomin and Zamorak being discrete or being continuous characters with how they were in the Sixth Age.
You just hit the nail on the head there with that, in terms of what's happening right now with the story, I think.
Yeah.
Because they could go further on this, and they could tell different stories, but they retold the Saradomin versus Zamorak story with these two characters, as they probably wanted it to go off in the Sixth Age, but of course everybody at the time portrayed Saradomin good, Zamorak evil, and of course the gods overshadowed everything. Hence, this was, the big reset button.
Yeah.
So,
additionally, now you have characters who can't just solve their problems by being a god with the snap of a finger.
Yeah, that's the other thing. They don't have the omnipotent powers. Not omnipotent, but
which makes the player more important.
Yes.
Much to the chagrin of many people.
Goodness.
Much to the chagrin of many people with gods being gone. I don't know if it's many, but I know I've run up against people who would rather be, still working with the gods rather than these characters. Where do you guys land on that?
It's a not uncommon sentiment.
I get it. I mean, the amount of timeline shenanigans that had to be going on during the Sixth Age, be like, oh, we got to put like disclaimers in all these quests that the gods are back now, or like the status quo was so shooken up by that it made it really hard to then the quest requirements argument starts coming up way harder and things like that. Where now we're more at a state that like it doesn't matter if you've done I don't even know what quest like Wagat the Sleeper Mithril the Majrat quest. It's like nothing's really changed since then. Like you can have the same world be the same world.
Yeah, like I miss the gods in the sense that I liked many of them as characters, but I think like narratively they didn't work with the game. They introduced too many problems to the storytelling.
Yeah, theoretically, like the thing that I always ran into, and the way I liked it better than just having the Saradomin and Zamorak side was when we got to the extragalactic stuff. I found that stuff interesting, but I don't think that's very RuneScape-y, right?
It's not.
Aliens.
It's not.
As soon as you start pointing everything's an alien. That's weird.
Yeah.
Time travel.
And that's why people love their Zautak, right? And Zaros.
Yeah.
So, but, to bring this back to Moia inside the Legacy of Zamorak and Succession arc, the depth continues because you also, see a bit of tension there between her and Bilrog, calling out the Zamorakians for not innovating, for example.
Yeah, I think that going back to at least like Twilight of the Gods, I was surprised they brought Bilrog back at all, because I feel like he was pretty footnote at that point. But bringing him back in Twilight of the Gods obviously set him up for Moia to have something to do to overcome in Legacy of Zamorak.
I think they
being
needed...
like that old deep lore Zamorakian, that the new age Zamorakian is going to come in and be like, no, we're doing it this way.
Right. Well, I think he makes sense to bring back for a couple of reasons. First off, because even if it's not really done narratively super well, it has been established that it's been established in lore that he was high up in Zamorak's organization. But also, like, from a symbolic standpoint, who are the two main factions you associate with Zamorak? Demons and Majorat. So who is the Civil War? Krill and Bilrog.
Yes.
You could have done Zemo there too, but you can't believably have Zemo leading
a
Civil War faction
him as a leader?
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't work. You can't have that.
Yeah, and we all know, and, just now that you're mentioning that, we know that story's not done, because remember, we're storing Zemo, apparently, in our brig that we didn't know we had in Fort Forinthry.
We got Zemo in the cellar.
That's going to come back probably sooner than we think.
But anything else on the Legacy of Zamorak Succession season before we look at the Fort Forinthry stuff? Because I think we've covered most of.
I think that closing words on Legacy of Zamorak. I think that, like Extinction, we will realize in time just how many plates they were trying to spin to put so many things into place that it's like, okay, they were for however it was received, and maybe they should have there should have been just like, okay, we're going to take part of 2023 to tell more or whatever. They were trying to get pieces into place, and there was a lot going on in every little mini quest, like between Vengeance and Jared and whatever. It's like a lot's going to trace back to that, I think, in the future.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right. And then, of course, we get to everybody's most recent, memories of this character, Moia, in the Battle of Forinthry series, and she was even in the cutscene as we ended that in November, and it's very clear at this point in time. And I don't know, I said de facto leader of the Zamorakian forces, but she has a title of Imperator. Do we feel that it's still de facto, or is that she's actually the leader of the Zamorakian forces?
I think she's gotten everyone to recognize her.
She's definitely leader of the largest Zamorakian faction. Zamorakians being Zamorakians, it's entirily possible that
they might not believe in factions or leaders.
Yeah,
it's whoever can slither up and survive to the top, right?
Well, but we may also see, like, maybe the Black Knights say, no, screw you, we're going to do our own thing.
Sure, they have not actually been in Legacy of Zamorak or Fort 4-3 style line.
Yeah.
I will also point out that during the interrogation with Zemregal in Battle for 3, he does mention her twice. Once as the usurper, so maybe not everyone's respect, but also he says when Moia finishes ... So he is privy to her plan, so he's in the circle, but
how is that the case?
Because Zemo is a worm.
He's biding his time in the faction that's got power for now. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, he's just going along with whatever will keep everyone from realizing how useless he is.
It's kind of both sides, but that's probably always a tension in the Zamorakian faction. They're probably always like vying for top spot or power or something like that. They're not very loyal, I don't think.
And, you know, there's also the fact that in Battle of Forinthry, we know that Moia cares for the Majorant. We know that she has also resurrected Bilrock here. And when you start teeing all these things up together, are you guys seeing what I'm seeing here? In that
she might just be the future of their race.
Yes.
Just might.
Yes, but also it feels like this is a huge kind of reset for the way the Majorant story could have went, in that now we're finally seeing what might have happened without gods back prior to 2013, and now we're seeing one of these directions. And I feel like it's a very different direction what we were talking about at the end of the saga and at the end of Ritual of the Majorant, but it's definitely a path that probably, you know, could have been taken. There could have been a civil war, and this could have been the same way it ended up. And that's my, you know, whole grand conspiracy theory of the modern era of RuneScape writing, is that they were looking for, you know, a big reset button, a way to get rid of the gods, a way, in effect, to say the Sixth Age was, you know, a fun distraction and diversion from 2013 until 2022, where we had gods on the world and, you know, we played in their playground, but now we're going back to how things were before, how things would have been, and everything that we've seen with Battle of Forinthry, Zamorak, you name it, was something that probably could have happened prior to the World Wakes. That's my grand conspiracy theory inside all Jessica-related things.
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Which is, in some arguments about Legacy Zamorak and the Age of Chaos and stuff like that, it's been said that the Sixth Age has been quote-unquote erased. Do you feel like the current content of the past year and a half, or however long since like Twilight, it's respected? Does the Sixth Age feel gone, or does it feel like that was a chapter?
It depends on your character and when you started playing. Because if you just started playing, you know, with Fresh Start Worlds and you left when EOC came out, the Sixth Age might as well not exist for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could pick up, you know, Janice and I talked about this with the last membership deal. You played Fresh Start, you put it down after that, you come back with this membership deal at Christmas or Premier Club. You do the Battle of Forinthry, you know, quests back to back to back. What's changed? Do you need the Sixth Age? No, you don't. Yeah, you get, you know, lots of fun stories with Syntiston and archaeology and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But do you need it to make sense of what's going on right now in Fort 4 and 3? No.
And that was definitely probably a big narrative goal, is that they can get to a point where something like a Fresh Start, playing modern content, makes more sense.
Exactly. Yeah. And with that, you know, who is going to, in effect, shepherd the Zamorakian side forward without a god? Oh, it's Moia.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been since the very beginning. And in many ways, this is one thing that RS3 is doing similar to old school, is that they're now telling these sorts of stories in terms of still displaying Zamorakian ideals without needing Zamorak on the playing field, if that makes sense. And that's how old school wants to do it as well. And maybe we're for the better for that. Maybe we're not. I don't know.
Well, it's kind of going back to RS2 storytelling, because it's going back to the gods being philosophical ideas rather than active agents.
That's exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what it is.
I guess the difference is that what Zamorak stands for has kind of evolved.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And for fairness, you do learn that in Dishonour among Thieves.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So maybe the Sixth Age is still kind of needed for that if you kind of want to, you know, read the chapter on that, but it's not, you know, a prerequisite as it was, and you still get Moia to this place, I think, just by looking at what's happening with Succession on that. So, do we want to, you know, kind of dip our toes into the field of speculation about, you know, what's happening next year?
And be so very wrong.
I mean, that's why I asked, because we tried it with Zamorak and we were wrong.
I don't mind. I would like someone else to go first, though.
I have,
okay,
I have
I'll
no
bite.
idea. So it's going to be Zerdode's first.
Okay.
All right, I'll bite. I mean, like, the logical place for them to go next, because they've teased it, is Moia is going to do something.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of don't think they're going to do that. Just because I feel like it's almost too obvious. I don't
Okay.
know. I don't really have a good reason for it, but
Gut feeling.
yeah, just my gut feels that I think they're going to go a different way on it, but what
To me,
they're
it
gonna
has to
do-
be a tie-in to necromancy more than just, having Zamorak in the cellar.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to tie necromancy in a little bit more, because is just kind of off in the ether right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, they've set up a lot of threads. They've got a lot of plates spinning.
Mm-hmm.
One that I really wanted them to do, I think I mentioned this back during the episodes that we made during Legacy of Zamorak, is they sort of tease the werewolves going to war against the vampires in Canifus.
Yes.
That I'd love to see.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, because the Canifus storyline has been pretty much done since we finished the Myrek stuff over there.
Yeah, we've revisited it very briefly in Azanadra's Quest.
The two guards.
The two guards that were added with Azanadra's Quest, and a little bit with Venescula through archaeology as the dig site manager. But yeah, it's basically been unchanged. It's basically been untouched ever since Blood Runs Deep, which is
River
firmly
Blood,
5th age.
Mhm.
That's fair.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Blood Runs Deep, that's the Fermentic one. Sorry.
Different 5th age blood.
Different 5th age blood. It is very late. So
No, it's totally fine.
Crack theory. I want to see. I'm recalling some conversations I had last year about this. Crack theory. I would love to see Moia pulling us into court and charging us rent for living in Forinthry.
Ooh, that'd be a great new
landlord
court
our
case
balls
batch.
off.
Okay, fair enough.
Do
Not
the
gonna happen.
Zamarakians
No.
know
Very
the wilderness? Do they believe in landlords?
I mean, I think they would believe in landlords if it
Do they
screwed
believe
us
in
over
charging
somehow.
money? Yes. My theory as far as this year would be, yes, I think that Purple Bill Rock matters. I feel like you tease that there at the end of the quest because that's your cliffhanger going forward. I don't think we're going to be dealing with Moia super directly. Yeah, I think that maybe Purple Bill Rock might fill the same role that Zamorak filled for this past arc.
Oh, that's interesting. So kind of just something in the background.
A thrall or something.
Yeah,
I think that Moia
the soldier that Moia sends out after us.
I think that Moia and Adraste are here for the long term, not the short term. And then I think that I think Zamorak in the cell is something that's going to be paid off sometime this year. I think that Vorkath being noted as missing and not being killed in the boss fight will be something that's relevant this year. I think that anything that it left open specifically will be this year somehow in some plot that has to do with the Raptor and Mistlin. So those are generally. I'm not going to go more specific than that.
No, of course.
Wrong.
Yeah, and I mean, with that, you still have the Moia thread that, of course, runs through all that. And, you get to what I see with this is that, and we already answered this, is that now what we're seeing is that RS3 is bringing forward the god philosophies or their lore angles or their beats, as if you could call it, now through the gods' followers and their actions and their interpretations of what Zamorakianism is in the case of Moia, rather than just having the god do the thing themselves like they did in the 6th Age, which probably works out for the better now that we think about it, of course.
It's very freeing from a writing standpoint because it lets you sort of play with characters' actions and beliefs a little bit more. Like, you can have lots of different people who have different interpretations of what Zamorakianism is, but if you have Zamorak doing a thing, it has to be Zamorakianism because, like, by definition.
Yes.
And in many ways, it's more fun to talk about, the way they're doing that and what the angle might be, rather than just seeing him do it, if that makes sense. So,
yeah.
And that's probably for the better. And I always have this thing bouncing around in my head, and it's something that I would like to work into a podcast at some point or another. I don't know if I'd have to look back at what we did on the Sixth Age stuff monthly bitwise, but I always feel like I need to ask this question out and about and maybe do a show on it at some point. Is that, now that we have the Sixth Age thoroughly in the back mirror, should it have went that way? And what would the road not taken look like? Moya's involvement included in that. So.
What the road not taken looks like
what
is
does
a
the
very
sequel
hard
to
question,
Ritual the
but...
Majrat look like?
Yeah, and that's partially why, we don't do those things that often, is because they're just so hard to do, in that we don't have the knowledge of them, like a Mott Raven or what have you, available to say what that would be. So, but
yeah, we were talking about this over lunch one day, and it would have been pretty cool.
Yeah.
Exactly. No.
If only. But that pretty much does it on the Moia front. Anybody else have any Moia thoughts? Anything that we should mention before we go?
Any Moia thoughts?
Any Moia thoughts?
Any Moia thoughts? That's interesting. I like it.
Not intended. Not intended. Not intended.
But it happened. We were all here for it.
We were.
Should have just taken the W, man.
All right, we do have a few achievements this week. We have Mej Quest with 99 crafting on the 13th, Drama Free with 99 necromancy on the 10th, as well as Mood Dragon X with 99 necromancy on the 10th as well, and Psyoasis got 120 prayer also on the 10th. You can see people taking a rest from double XPing after that. But tennis pick of the week, and you're going to have to explain this one.
Oh, yeah.
Because I pulled this up, and I was like, you are suggesting a game here that has an overwhelmingly negative review on Steam.
I'm 100% doing that, and I've actually watched that get worse and worse as the day has went on, because it just unlocked this morning, right? And I first thought it was mixed, and now we're all the way down to overwhelmingly negative. Okay. 20 years ago, a little game called Star Wars Battlefront came out, and this is the original, the PS2 era Star Wars Battlefront. Everyone loved it. When the new Battlefronts came out, everyone was like pretty disappointed because it didn't measure up to the classics. And they released a remaster of the classic collection today. And unfortunately, apparently the multiplayer servers are it's not good. It's bad. It's real bad. Hence, overwhelmingly
Well,
negative.
to be fair, day one, right? So, and see, that's the thing always for me, is it really fair to punish a game dev in such negative reviews on a day one for something like this if your game is just, drawing so many people in that you can't keep the servers up, or, you're dealing with the other idea that it's running on a tin can and the server performance is going to be horrid, even if you just got a small group of people on it.
Yeah, and that seems to be part of the collective
Though, so
anxiety.
People think it's just bad servers, then, is what people think, with small number of people.
Well, it was only 2 to start with. And then I guess when more opened up, it didn't get much better.
Okay. So tell us about the gameplay and what exactly why we're doing this as a pick of the week then.
Well, the reason I'm picking it is because I'm someone that kind of says multiplayer because I'm gonna get shot in the head anyway, and that's not really fun. So I play a lot of the single player and the campaign mode and the Galactic Conquest, which is one of the things that made the original classics just so good. And that experience is wonderful. It is just as good as it was, with a few extra things. There's some more heroes in Battlefront 2 that weren't there before, like Mace Windu and Asajj Ventress, and I think Kit Fisto is in there. I don't know. Some people that weren't there before. There's a few more, maps that weren't there before. So very minor, additions. But it just looks nice playing on a modern computer now.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And is it remastered or is it exactly the same graphics that it was?
They call it remastered, but I mean, it looks. I don't know. It plays just like it used to. It probably looks better, but.
So what I'm betting they probably did then, if it I'm looking at the screenshots right now and they do look like it would have been, like it would be from that 2004 era. So what I'm betting that they just did is that they increased the resolution on all the textures and models and whatnot to be acceptable for how we view things in 2024 would be my guess, is what they mean by remastered.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It looks like it looks like those nice chunky 2004 era graphics, polygons, and it's done by Aspire, so not a huge studio, so they're probably not building from the ground up.
Yeah, that would make sense on that. And I mean, and see, that's what I said, is that you always need to have some sort of, explanation behind what the overwhelmingly negative review is. But if you're doing this for just single player, sure, fine, have at it. But I do know people as well for whom the Battlefront games back in the day, was, one of those things that you would, just kind of move to a bit if you were, done with Counter-Strike or Half-Life 2 Deathmatch. And you wanted, just a different change of pace. So I can totally see, and I understand why the gamers from that generation would be rating that as overwhelmingly negative for that if the servers aren't working on day one, just because it's like expecting, it's like saying, hey guys, we're bringing back a remodeled or a remastered version of Counter-Strike 1.7 with up-to-date graphics and whatnot. Here, have at it, and then the servers quit. You would have the exact same response to that.
Yeah,
I would have felt the same way if the single player had been trash, right? Like, I would have been like, great, what am I supposed to do with this? All I have is multiplayer. I can't, that's not fun. I mean, it would have been the same way if the situation was reversed, but like you said, Shane, I'm hopeful that give them a little bit of time. Like, I don't know how on earth they didn't anticipate this being as popular and as big as what it has turned out to be. That being said, now they know. Come on, guys. This has the potential, I think, to this could it's gonna dwarf the modern Battlefront player numbers, I'm sure, if they could get it working right. Like, everybody would be playing that.
Yeah. And I just checked the daily and weekly Steam charts for this, and it's not in the top 100. So I have a feeling the reason it's getting that overwhelmingly negative is that it's just being hit by by a very diehard player base on that. So
yeah, skimming the reviews, it looks like a lot of the negativity is just because they can't get on the multiplayer to play because there's not enough servers. Which is fair,
and then that's gonna improve over time and whatnot. So and I mean,
if you're like me, if you're just into getting into classic, the cool thing about Battlefront, these classic Battlefronts is you could drive anything, you could do anything. Like, it's pretty badass to jump in an AT-AT and just start raining death down, right? Like, it's great.
And
Anyway,
that's the important bit. That's what makes it your pick of the week. So
yeah.
right on with that. All right, what have we been doing on RS? Zerdones, what have you been up to this week?
Honestly, not very much. Just kind of biding my time, waiting for the Easter event. I've mostly been playing Middle Earth: Shadow of War.
Ooh, that's a good game.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm in the middle section now, and it kind of bloats a bit. It's got a lot of threads, got a lot of plates spinning. It's kind of hard to know what to do, but
That's really fair. I don't think I've ever made it through the actual storyline, but
yeah, I mean, just playing around with the orcs is really
yeah, I've
fun.
snuck up on a lot of orcs.
Yeah, the orcs are a lot of fun to play with.
Nice. How about you, Avernick?
Sort of same as Zerdones. Not much lately. I feel like after double XP week, I haven't played much, but Easter event will almost definitely get me back on. We'll see how long.
Yeah, and see, like we
2
said
weeks at least.
like we said at the top of the show, that's going to be the interesting thing to mention with this is that, well, here we are. Easter's on the way. We'll be talking about that next week, the live stream and whatnot, and see how that copies in the mold of Christmas. But as for me, I did take advantage of the PVM week last week, and no progress, no meaningful progress on that Razio log. We're not going to talk about it. We're just going to leave that there as that number inches closer and closer to 1,000. But I did get to the point where, by design and with intention, I have managed to lightning skip on all 3 phases of hard mode Carapac.
Ooh, nice.
Damn.
Which, of course, is a big deal, because if you can, get to that mechanic, that means you're putting out a huge amount of DPS, and you can start doing the boss repetitively and start seeing benefits from it, and in that it becomes a positive over a negative. So I use the remaining few hours of the buff on Sunday's not double XP time, the Thok event, to make that happen. So that was quite fun and enjoyable, and I feel like I'm at the point where I can probably go back and, just do that. If I feel like, I'm up for an hour of PVM, I can just hop on and go Carapac hard mode, and I don't need to worry about, the death costs or anything with that, and that it's going to be reasonably well successful, and I'm not going to die too much. So that was my learning experience this time, and, we'll refine that further next time, and also maybe throw in another boss down the road with that. But that's what I've been up to on the RS3 front. Lots and lots of PVM with that, which is weird because I don't think I would have ever said that. Hence why you should go and listen to our most recent monthly bit. But Tanis, what have you been up to?
Chilling. As per, what I do. Pedals and skilling. Still slowly ticking away woodcutting, and
where are we at with that now? Post Imkando Hatchet, post XP rebalance last summer. Where are we at with that? Like, where are we at in terms of what's the best to do if you're going for 120? Is it still the golden bamboo or elders, crystals?
Yeah, that's the problem. Like, they're all. I feel like, so I'm doing elders, but nothing is like stand out head and shoulder above the others, right? Like, so I've had a lot of trouble kind of deciding which route I would go, and I'm like, well, I'll just do elders, because I'll end up with the logs. But
yeah, and which you can sell.
Yeah.
Or
exactly.
if you were limited to an hour a day thereabouts, I'd say just go do bamboo. But I don't necessarily know how
I
that
think
balances
golden
out.
bamboo is still the best, but it is a limited resource.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Which would make sense because it it'd be really bad if that if that update came out and they didn't do that. So
You can't harm the arc.
no, and yeah, which of course is your baby, right?
Oh yes.
But that's interesting. The wiki now has a section on training to 200 mil wood cutting.
Really?
And
Really?
it says the most efficient way to train from max level to 200 mil is to use crystallize and light form while chopping mahogany trees in the Khazari jungle. This yields 468,000 woodcutting XP per hour.
Crystallized mahogany.
Right, because your success rate is so high.
I wonder, is there a reason? You have to be in that
So it used to
jungle?
be crystallized acacia, and now it's crystallized mahogany.
Cool.
It's from the rebalance.
And, with that XP rate, that's actually not too bad.
I don't want to go to the jungle, though. Can I go to, like, the little mahogany pen?
Maybe
Yeah.
the jungle has the highest
Yeah.
density.
The jungle probably has the highest, collection of trees. But, I mean, you've done Legends Quest, so why not?
I don't like the jungle.
The aggressive things, I don't know if they go
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, but I don't know. Interesting nonetheless. Maybe that's something we need to look at going forward on this, and just where that has landed post Imcando and whatnot. But anyways, before we start another deep dive episode here, I will say. Reminder to subscribe to the podcast if you want it delivered automatically to you. We're on all the podcast listening services out there. We're on Apple, which now has transcriptions. Spotify, which has already had transcriptions. I looked that up today. And, of course, Pocket Casts as well. Update.show/subscribe. And we're also on YouTube at youtube.com/RSBANDB. Please do give the show a like and subscribe there, even if you listen on audio. Greatly helps the podcast out. But we'll be back next week to talk about Easter. So thank you, Zerdones and Avernick, for joining us.
Thank you.
Always happy to be here.
Yeah, it was fun to talk about lore and, figure out what exactly is up with one of our characters in game. Tanis, anything else before we go?
That's it for me.
Alrighty then. Well, we'll see you guys next week for another episode of RSBANDB Update. See you then, everyone. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.